budget meeting. The invocation will be by the Reverend Michael Malone, who is the senior pastor of the Indian River Presbyterian Church, and I will lead everyone in pledge to the flag. So please rise.
Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you that you establish government for the well-being of all of the citizens of this county and state and throughout the world. Thank you for these commissioners and administrators. Would you grant to them wisdom and grace and charity and a genuine concern to fulfill their responsibilities for the citizens of this city and this county. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll have the budget overview by County Administrator Joseph Baird. Joe?
Thank you. The budget you have in front of you tonight is proposed at $472,520,328. That's about 5.7% above last year, or $25 million. The reason for the increase is, first thing is we have proposed 66 new positions within the budget, of which 30 are constitutional officers. Of the 36 that fall under the Board of County Commissioners, only 19 relate to taxes. The 66 positions account for $3.3 million of the increase. We have about $2.4 million in COLA and step raises. We have $773,000 in health insurance increases, $1.3 million in Florida retirement increases. $1.9 million of the increase is due to the new jail expansion opening up. Fuel has increased by $1.4 million in the proposed budget. Our electrical costs, we estimate, are going to increase by about $820,000. Property insurance increases due to what everyone else has seen in Florida. We estimate our property insurance increase in this budget is $2 million over last year. Also, the voters approved a land acquisition bond in the amount of $50 million. The debt service is included in this budget, and it's $4.6 million. And we have $2.5 million in replacement fire stations. That's a brief overview. When you look at the budget tonight, we are not proposing any rate increases in utilities. We've tried to keep the millages below current year. We got rollback in the MSTU. We're not proposing any increases in our solid waste budget. The only thing that we may have that may be considered an increase is the year we were in, we were going to put $1 aside, increase the golf course rates by $1, and we didn't do it for capital improvement. We may do that mid-year this year. And that'll go straight to capital because the irrigation system needs to be replaced. It's over 20 years old. And that's a brief overview. The first taxing fund, Indian River County Board of County Commissioners are responsible for four taxing items on your bill. One is a general fund, which all residents pay countywide. The other is the MSTU taxing fund, which only unincorporated residents pay, and those are people who do not live in any city. And the third is the emergency service taxing district, and that's for fire, paramedic, ALS service, and everyone pays that millage rate except for Indian River Shores. And the last is the bond issues for the environmentally sensitive land, which voters had approved. The first item tonight will be the general fund. The general fund is proposed at $85,992,375. The proposed millage is 3.1973, which is 10.14% above rollback, but it's about 9 0.7% below the current rate, which is 3.5204. The reason for the budget increase in the general fund, the budget increased by $7,980,000 is mainly the following. There's 38 new positions proposed in the budget, of which 30 are constitutional, are in the constitutional budget, and that primarily relates to the opening of the jail. They account for $1.7 million of the increase. The BCC departments account for $1.6 million. There's $504,000 roughly in COLA step raises for the board employees and $1.5 for the constitutionals. In addition, health insurance increased by roughly $400,000 for the general fund, and retirement increases in the Florida retirement system were $772,000. The constitutionals also accounted for a $5.2 million increase in the general fund. And that's a brief overview of what the reasons for the increase are.
Anything else, Joe?
That's it for the general fund.
Oh, okay.
Now, for each of the funds, I think on
We
the
have to
agenda,
open we have to
we'll
open the public hearing.
and then receive public comment and consider any changes, and then make a motion to approve the budget and the proposed millage, the tentative
Okay.
millage.
We're going to open the public hearing on each individual fund then? Is that the way you want to do it?
Yes, for each of the funds.
I will open the public hearing. Is anyone from the public would like to be heard on the general fund budget? Yes, sir. Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, Chairman. Some of you have heard my presentation at the workshop. This is a public hearing as I understand it, and the material presented are part of the official record. Last year at the budget workshop, after I made some comments regarding the Honorable Sheriff Roy Raymond's budget for 2005-206, I was accused of grandstanding. Obviously, everyone has a right to express their opinion. This year, at the budget workshop for 206-207, the Honorable Sheriff Raymond filled this courtroom with his employees for the discussion of the 12% salary increase for his staff. I have no reason to grandstand. I'm not here to make any accusations. I'm not here to debate issues. I'm here on behalf of the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County to express their concerns, and I'm sure there are many others, on how their tax dollars will be spent in 206 and 207. During the 37 years I worked for General Motors, I prepared numerous budgets and evaluated many departmental budgets. I am well aware of the budget process and how requests are inflated. With this as a background, I have a PowerPoint presentation on behalf of the Taxpayers Association, which will show, in my opinion, a number of concerns of many taxpayers in this county. This is a proposed analysis of the sheriff's budget for the year 2006. And I'm presenting this on behalf of the Taxpayers Association. All of the data used for this analysis was obtained through the Office of Management and Budget, except for county population information. Let me go back and review the sequence of events as to where we are, how we got here for the proposed budget. On May the 1st, It was originally presented at $42,340,000, a 12% increase over 205 and 206. On May the 12th, capital outlay of $368,591 was added from the impact fees. For Pacific, and as I understand it, the impact fees are supposed to be used for new facilities, only those with at least a 5-year lifetime. And this increase of the use of the impact fees is for the law enforcement section. And as I understand it, this is not a new facility. It's additional people, but not a facility. The new facility is being built for the correction side of the picture. On May the 26th of this year, there was a mandated federal retirement increase of $560,546. On May the 31st, presented in a letter at $42,901,217. On June the 27th, it was lowered by $1 million to $41,901,546 after initial review by staff, which was a 10.8 increase over 205 and 206. And at the workshop we had earlier, it was increased then back again to $42,227,799, at 11.99 increase, which is $4,521,412 over the previous year. The next slide shows a budget versus number of employees since the year 2000 and 2001. You can see the budget amount has been it's about a 64% increase. The employees at about a 29% increase, or 117 employees. The budget amount in the last 6 years amounts to about $16,501,043. I might say that the 117 employees that have increased, there are 2 others which are contracted from Wackenhut, which work over at the county courthouse. The next slide shows the budget by population. And you can see, again, that the budget increase of 64% amounts to the figure I gave you early of 16,501,000 plus. The population has increased by 13%. Now, if you look at somewhat of a comparison between Indian River County and Fort Pierce, Indian River County population is about 130,043, whereas Fort Pierce has 240,000 plus, which is about an 84.5% greater than Indian River County. The budget in Indian River County, $42.2 million, and in Fort Pierce, about $59.2 million. They increased their budget roughly about 16.63%. They increased their employees for next year roughly about 35, where Indian River County is increasing the number of new employees for the sheriff of 28. I might point out here that the population we show for 206, 207 is an estimate. If we look at some of the salaries of the department and see what the increases are, and if you look at the department looking down the year 2005, 2006, and then compare it to that same person in 2006 and 2007, and the last column shows the increase. For example, the first one listed there, last year budget received $44,068. That's a salary at that time. This coming 206, 207, it's planned at $54,178, which is a 22.9% increase. Now, I recognize that some of these salary increases are due to promotions. It's obviously the person being promoted is going to get a greater increase. But if you look at those numbers, starting at 22.9, goes to 21, 41, 46, 30,000. Now, this data is taken from the published records from the sheriff's budget. If we look at the next slide, which is the law enforcement employee comparison, again, we have two columns, 205, 206 versus 206, 207. For the same 197 employees the previous year versus this coming year. And you can see that those above 40,000, last budget year was 110. This year is expected to be 158 of them. Those that will be below the 40,000, last budget year was 87. This year is projected at 39. Now, if you look at the salary and benefits, you get sort of the same comparison. Last year, 205, 206, those above 60,000 were 108. This present year, it's projected there will be 149, a significant increase. And again, those below 60,000 a year, last year was 89, is projected they're going to be 48. These were the same 197 employees in law enforcement. If we go to the correction employee comparison, we see a similar situation. Again, we're talking about 93 employees last year budget and the same 93 employees in this proposed budget. Again, those above 40,000 salary only, there were 49. Projected this year, there will be 89. Those below, last budget year is 44, and only 4 projected for this budget year. Now, if you look at salary and benefits, you get the same sort of comparison. Again, it's the same 93 employees, not new employees, but the same 93. If we look at the next slide, we look at the overtime and the incentive pay increases. If you look at the year 2005, you see the overtime was about $763,605, where the incentive for that same year was $283,370. And if you look at the year 2006, 2007, which is the last two bars to the right of the chart, you will see that the overtime has been decreased considerably, about almost $300,000. With the increased number of employees coming aboard, obviously you can increase, hopefully, your overtime. But you also will note that the incentive pay for the employees had gone up, $125,492. So we reduce overtime, but increase the incentive pay. And I certainly understand some of the needs for having incentive pay for employees. Now, if we go to the next chart, look at the operating expense budget increase. Again, in the year 2005, next to the last bar on the right, there's $6,956,461,000. Now that has been reduced about almost $150,000, and the increase in the operating budget increase of over $4.4 million for the entire budget. As I understand it, there is no capital outlay for existing facilities which are included in the operating expenses. something that I do not understand. As far as the operating expenses, certainly there must be a replacement for existing vehicles, and somewhere that must be in the budget. It is my understanding that the budget that is approved by the county commissioners, that 1/12 of it each month is given to the sheriff for his operating procedures. And as I understand it, that money might be moved from one account to the other account. But I do not know for sure how that might take place. To stop and look at some of the excerpts from the sheriff's budget in the past years, back in 2001, 2002, talking about the game of smoke and mirrors. And the sheriff indicated that he was working hard to reduce his budget, and I can understand that to an extent. But during that year, first year, there was $1.5 million increase with a request for 10 full-time employees. In 2002 and 2003, we had a similar situation. There was a reduction in the expense categories of $76,000, capital expenditures by $252,000, but again, a $1.2 million increase. If we go to the next year, we see a similar situation. Reducing costs, budget increase, $3,136,000. 2005, similar situation, with $1,751,000 increase. In 2005, 2006, again, working hard to reduce the budget, but an increase of $4,286,000 plus. And again, the year 2006, 2007, operating expenses have been reduced almost by $150,000, but with an increase of over $4 million in the budget. This concludes my formal presentation as far as the PowerPoint is concerned. I do have a few overheads I would like to show you. The first one regarding the request for new employees. You'll see there the number of employees that are being requested. Those employees, as I understand it, are primarily for law enforcement, not the correction. I think there are 29 listed there for you to see where the main people will be located. The next item, I may have it, Kim, is the capital improvements. These are the capital improvements which are projected from the impact fees. And as I understand, and maybe our attorney can explain the situation, that these capital improvements we're talking about are primarily for law enforcement, not for the correction facility, which is the new facilities which are being built. And so I do not know as to whether it's appropriate to use the impact fees for existing facilities or only for new facilities. And maybe at some point along the way, our attorney will explain how that is done. Finally, question of the Citizen Review Committee, which has been in existence for some time. It is my understanding that the members have been nominated by present or previous commissioners. And I've been asked the question, does this committee operate under the Sunshine Law? I know there are certain requirements that if you operate under the Sunshine Law, there are certain records that must be maintained as far as minutes, agenda, and other items such as that. So in closing, those are the two issues I'd like to raise relative to whether the impact fees can be used for an existing situation. You're just increasing the number of people in law enforcement. And 3 questions. The second one relative to the Sunshine Law. And finally, the issue, the money that is given to the sheriff, how that can be moved from one account to the other. Because as I see it, there is no capital equipment listed as a separate item to replace the existing equipment. And I thank you for allowing me the time to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Will, would you like to make any comments?
Well, on the issue of the law enforcement impact fees and their use for operations, the impact fees don't go to any of the salary expense or that type of operational expense of the sheriff. As the impact fee ordinance is set up, the board has made findings that the existing law enforcement is not sufficient to accommodate new development without decreasing levels of service, and established a level of service at 2.09 officers per thousand, and made another finding that revenue sources are not sufficient to fund capital improvements necessary to accommodate new development. So the impact fees from law enforcement should go to the capital facilities needed to equip the deputies that are going to be required to accommodate new growth, maintaining that level of service of 2.09 officers per thousand. So I think that's the answer on the impact fees. On the Law Enforcement Advisory Committee, if that's the name of it, I think that would be a committee subject to the Sunshine Law that should keep minutes and be open to the public. It's making recommendations that may be acted upon by the sheriff. As far as the shifting money from funds to funds, maybe Jason can address that process better than I.
Yes, the Florida statutes govern the budget of the sheriff, and there are certain categories that, as the board approves the budget, the sheriff must stay within those. Those are salaries, benefits, operating expenses, and capital expenses. And the sheriff has to get board approval to move monies between those different categories, which he did receive earlier this fiscal year for the current year to make some adjustments.
I got a question about that. I'm going by memory, so I may not be accurate, but if I remember correctly, this board voted, not unanimously, but this board voted last year to allow the sheriff to move money from one account to the other out of the 3 areas by simply notifying the commission that he has moved that money and it was not required any longer to come back in front of this board for approval of that. Am I incorrect?
Yes, he got authority to move. That's exactly, you're correct. He got authority to move money wherever he needed to within those categories.
Prior to that approval, the sheriff would get approval to move the monies from one account to the other prior to moving that money. Now he can move it and not do it, but tell us or notify us that he has moved it.
Right. If I recall correctly, that was for the current fiscal year. There was a blanket approval given for that.
It was just for the fiscal year? Yeah, I'd like to, at some point in time, Kim, I'd like to look at those minutes and see what was actually approved. Just curious to see where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any? You may come to the mic, please.
I just want to clearly understand, Mr. Collins, that as far as using the impact fees for capital equipment, it's perfectly permissible to do that as far as the law enforcement is concerned. But again, you still have the 5-year rule that it must be something that will last for at least 5 years. Is that right, sir?
It should have a 5-year useful life to be considered a capital improvement, yes.
Good, thank you.
Well, I'm not sure in the case of, that's the optional sales tax I think you're thinking about. For law enforcement, it's for the increased demand due to population growth. You can cover the vehicle, the lights, equipping an officer to get on the road. It's impact fee related. And what it is, it must be an additional officer for the additional growth. We can pay for the automobile, the lights, the radio, all his equipment, his gun, things like that. Cannot be for other things. It must be for those items, and that's what we can use our law enforcement impact fee for. That's exactly what that is for.
So if they have ordered 10 laptops, it must last for 5 years, yes?
Will says 5 years. We do not have that rule.
Yes, we do. The definitions in the impact fee ordinance say capital improvement means land acquisition, construction, purchase of buildings, site improvements, architecture, engineering services, purchases of vehicles and equipment with at least a 5-year life expectancy, and consultant fees, but excludes maintenance and operations.
Oh, he's right then, but we use it. In the impact fee law, we do use that. We are allowed to move to, and that's why we put it in place, so that the existing taxpayer wouldn't pay through ad valorem taxes for these items. It wouldn't be on your tax bill. Instead, a developer would pay through an impact fee for the additional demand, or someone who, for the new house would pay for the additional demand, and that was the thinking behind it, rather than having it on our ad valorem taxes. The 5-year rule, and we've got it in there. I think that there is some case, and we'll have to look at it, but I don't think that a sheriff's car lasts 5 years anymore, and it was maybe old. We maybe should have been a little more careful with that, but it is part of the rules, and part of the breakdown that we did at the time we did impact fees did include the automobiles. That's what it's for. There's a list of the items that we showed in our impact fee study that we would use for law enforcement impact fees. It was the gun, the light kit, the automobile, everything, the cost of putting an officer on the road. Not his operating costs or his salary, but the cost to put an officer on the road due to the new demand from growth.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Is there any other comments from the audience, Sheriff?
We may have to change it.
Again, I'd like to respond to Mr. Coffey. I guess why I show so much frustration with him is that every year since I've been in office, Mr. Coffey specifically, as well as the Taxpayers Association, has been invited to attend our budget preparation sessions, and these normally last an entire week, the better part of a day each day. Each year he has refused to show up and attend these meetings, even though he becomes very critical of our operation. We've tried to answer questions for him, invited him to come sit down and talk with us personally and be able to show him the documentation of these things, and each year he continues to come in and attack us in a public forum. In the last workshop, many of these questions were answered, yet he ignored the answers. Things such as the impact fee use. He's compared us with St. Lucie County in population. Well, the Sheriff's Office in St. Lucie County handles the unincorporated area, as do we in Indian River County. The biggest population in St. Lucie County by far is Port St. Lucie and the city of Fort Pierce, far more than the unincorporated area. So we're not saying apples to apples and oranges to oranges. He's taking in the entire population, which the sheriff has no responsibility for, or at least not primary responsibility. In the salary increases, this time he did call attention that these differences in salary were probably as a result of promotions. He selects salaries that have impacts such as promotion or change in rank and so forth, and throws out select figures rather than to look at the entire picture. Overtime, yes, we do have overtime, but we have a very unique situation. We are mandated by the state to train almost 24,000 hours a year, and this is mandated by the state. We have officers that are working at night and have to be trained. They have to come in during the daytime to be paid. If I have an officer that's working at night, he writes traffic citations, he makes arrests, he has to come in and attend court, and he must be paid overtime for that time that he comes in. The incentive pays that we do have a small civilian incentive pay, but the primary incentive pay that we have is mandated by the state of Florida, by the police standards, and this is for college educations and specialized training that is mandated by the state. Our capital, and I was going to answer that, the change from category to category, but in order to do this, the benefit of that is that we are able to take lapse money primarily from unfilled positions and so forth, and be able to buy capital equipment this year and delete it from the upcoming year. There's a big benefit to that, especially in vehicles, because we're at the end of the manufacturing year, and we can buy cars a lot more efficiently now than we can to wait until it rolls into the new year and we're paying premium prices. Last year I returned $941,000 back to the county of unspent money. We purchased a $200,000 generator, emergency generator, which normally would be purchased by the building group within the county and not out of my budget, but we were able to do that through lapse money. And something that just occurred today that I'd like to call attention to. I told every year we go out and we shop everything we do, and this year I went out again and I shopped workers' compensation, and I found out with a hunt group that I could secure workers' compensation $100,000 less than what I'm paying the county for workers' comp. I had a meeting with County Administrator Baird and with Jason Brown and with the Human Resource Director to make sure that we were not going to impact the county severely by pulling out of that pool. And after negotiations today, the county was able to reduce my bill and my budget by $100,000 by us staying with the county. But that was done through me going out and shopping for a better price. So we truly do try to do everything that we can to lower our budget. This is a big operation. We go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We're the only agency that truly goes 24 hours a day. Even the fire department and EMS, when they're not handling calls, are able to shut their vehicles down. We must continue running our vehicles, burning gas, burning hours, 24 hours a day. And I think that these are things that need to be taken into consideration in any law enforcement agency. It is a unique situation, and I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there anyone else from the audience wishing to be heard? Yes, sir. Gentleman here.
I don't know how in the world I'll follow all that. My name is Leroy Kelly. I live at 14020 85th Street in the Fellsmere, unincorporated area of Fellsmere. This very quickly, I'd like to appeal to your compassion in regard to the millage rate. The values of the properties have increased dramatically. To say that when you talk about not raising the millage rate or considering the rollback, truth of the matter is the taxable values since 2002 have increased 67%. So I don't think it's entirely fair to say that you're not raising the millage rate when the values are going up so substantially that the taxes are going up. It's hard for folks to, particularly law enforcement and many of the county workers. I know in St. Lucie County they're trying to build neighborhoods to try to give these people a place to live. We can't afford our houses. The values have gone up so dramatically. When you're paying $800 a month in taxes, that's as much as a separate house payment. And I'm here primarily to ask you to really squeeze. I know it's been a campaign issue. Mr. Laffer, you talked about it in your campaign, lowering the millage rate. And I think this is the time to do it because the people are suffering to the point that it's going to dramatically impact your constituents. So if there's, I'm not suggesting that you're not concerned about it. All I'm saying is that it needs to be a primary consideration. The millage rate has to come down. If so many people misunderstand that. They're talking about the property values. The property values are market driven, but the millage rates are not. The millage rates are entirely up to you. Collectively, you get to decide whether you lower them or raise them. And this is the time to lower them because we can't continue this. There's going to, you see these communities, and you've heard about it in California. The Proposition 10, I think it was. People, they react react badly, and you start making decisions based on hatred for the politicians that are in the office, instead of really considering their qualifications. And I think if we don't get a handle on this, people are going to continue to suffer, and it's going to negatively impact your offices as well.
And you can't get your road graded.
You never have done that.
I know what you mean. No, I haven't forgot. I just don't have the answer.
Yeah. You didn't get yours graded either, did you?
No, sir, I have not. And neither has Mr. Smith back there in the back and several others. I don't have the answer for that. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Just dovetailing along what Mr. Kelly was saying. I've been asked by the president of the Association of Counties, Florida Association of Counties, to sit on the tax committee. And that's such a huge issue, the inequities that the Save Our Homes initiative has caused. And that nobody has the answer for it, other than the fact we think that the legislators are going to give us an answer. And it appears it's going to come in the form of a millage cap and a tax cap. And granted, we can do it right here. And I'm not disputing that at all. But knowing that every year going into a budget would certainly be nice. And the problem is you have two houses adjacent to each other that are worth the same amount, but one individual is paying half the amount of taxes. And that's a good thing. But the reality is one man's tax exemption is another man's tax burden.
And while your homesteaders, the values, their tax bills went down around $100. Mm-hmm. It's the non-homesteaders, or those that have tried to purchase a new home, and the commercial properties that are picking up the slack.
Yes, sir.
And it's to the point that you can't own property unless you're homesteading. You just simply can't pay the taxes. And I don't think it was meant to be that way.
And you're exactly right. And I don't know. I don't have the answer. The millage rates continue to drop, and I believe we have either the second
most in the state.
There's a graph. And let me say that of the general fund, the Board of County Commissioners budget is decreased as a percent of the general fund. And you work for one of the constitutionals. You work for the property appraiser. And they've grown. They could help by reducing their budget every year. And maybe you could talk to David. And they've grown and taken up a bigger share of our general fund every year. So they could do that first, because we have a graph, and we'll show that over the years, our departments have decreased as a percentage of the overall general fund. That's a graph right there. And the constitutionals and the state agencies that's why I love when the state wants to do tax cap. I have to laugh. Their agencies are the ones that are taking over a lot of my budget. Mm-hmm. And the constitutionals, 57% of my general fund is constitutionals. As you can see, only 23% is the Board of County Commissioner Department. It used to be 27. We've cut and cut. So that's what's going to take everyone. And I don't have a problem, but you do have to realize, talk about a tax cap, that it also is going to include constitutionals.
But when you talk about cutting, I think it's important to say that when you say you're not going to raise the millage rate. My boss gave me a great example. I think it was a wonderful example. If I'm the only person living in the county, and my taxes are $1 a year, and the next year my taxes go to $2, my taxes were raised. Even if you say you didn't raise the millage rate, because the values have increased so dramatically, my taxes have doubled. So the taxes do go up. And the truth of the matter is, until the millage rates are lowered, our taxes are going to continue to go up where we can't live here.
Well, I'm glad your boss did that example. He can do his part and not go up at all.
But are you suggesting that we're responsible for the huge budget?
Because if you said the expense goes from 1 to 2, if he does his part and doesn't go from 1 to 2, then guess what? My millage won't go up.
And you're suggesting that
that's a great example.
You're suggesting that our office is responsible for the budgeting?
No, I'm just saying look at it. It all takes all of us. As constitutionals are 57% of my general fund budget. State agencies, child services, state agencies are 3 now since they moved it. And you look at it, we're only 23%, where we used to be 30, then we went to 26 and 23. The pie is getting less and less of our departments are taking in, causing the increase in the general fund. And it is a hard environment. We're doing the best we can to try and keep the taxes down. If you look, we're one of the few, for instance, our millage rate that we're proposing today is 3.1973 for the general fund. It was 3.5204 for the year we're in. We're dropping it off 9.7%.
But let's not miss the debate. The values are going up so dramatically that you guys are making money hand over fist.
I can tell you too, Mr. Kelly, I know with my commercial property, my funeral home, last year was appraised at $225,000. This year is appraised at $570,000.
My point.
And I you know, thank God the new commissioner sitting here is going to be dealing with it, because it's a tough issue.
And given that, the only answer is to lower the millage rate.
Hey, I'm with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard on this general fund budget? I'll close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion that we move the general fund to roll back.
Go ahead and start cutting. That means that
I'll second that for discussion.
give me the numbers. About 5 million. What's it? 6 million. We can
$5.3 million is what the
we have
cut
to
is
cut
to
the
get there.
budget, so we have to make those decisions right now. I don't have a problem with
Do
that.
we want to give up our salary?
Our salary?
Yes, I'll give up mine.
I'll give up mine.
I'll give mine.
Oh, it's no joke. When you start cutting, I mean, we have to
Starts
still
here.
paint ourselves.
You have to realize that your departments are only 1.6, so tonight you're going to have to cut all the raises out of the sheriff's office. You ready? You've got a $2 million, and you know, I love the state talking about rollback and taxes and all this. They can't solve the insurance problem that's causing me a $2 million problem in my general fund. But they want to solve my problems when they can't solve their own.
Well, Joe, all I can
Or
tell you
roads.
is I've heard for the last month and a half on the campaign trail of how taxes have gone up and taxes have gone up, and I've seen it, and I've been through it. And all I did is made a motion.
And I do have a quick question, Mr. Chairman. if I
Got a
may.
motion in a second. Go ahead.
Along those lines, if we've raised impact fees substantially throughout the budget, 8 different areas.
We have.
And granted that those impact fees can't go to personnel. Am I correct on that?
They're not allowed to be used for operating.
Operating expenses. Okay. Does that include personnel or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I do understand that, but with us having, I would venture to say quite possibly the highest impact fees in the state, and at the same time, our budget is still increasing, and not just, I understand the budget increasing, but our general fund is increasing by 10.4 or 10.14%. I'm missing something here whenever we have money coming in that is it's a tax that goes into paying for growth. Then we have increasing property values that I understand how that works. And we do have a decreasing millage rate. In fact, my taxes, because I'm homestead, did go down. So, I want to thank you commissioners. You're doing a great job, I suppose. But if you're a commercial property guy, that you're not homesteaded, you have some serious issues to deal with.
That's because a business is making money.
Right.
So it's up to the business to carry the load of the brunt of the taxes.
And the dilemma with this whole thing, in my opinion, is this: is I don't see how a small businessman, or I'll just go ahead and say any business person, can make a business plan and not know what their assessment's going to be next year and count for the taxes they've got to pay. Quite possibly they're negative cash flowing because they didn't account for a 50% increase in the assessment of their property.
Well, and I guess my question, and Mr. Kelly maybe you can answer that, is why did my value go up so extreme? I didn't plan for that. I didn't. I was looking at last year at $225,000. In regards to my commercial property, I know the county administration building's going to be right next to it, but my goodness.
As I said, that's market driven, and and I'm not an appraiser, but I do know that it's based on the values of other properties and the sales, and it's all market driven.
And I can tell you, I'm not the only one that's had that issue.
It's not just the commercial properties. It's
we
the
are the brunt of
non-homestead
paying it. Yeah.
I had a call this morning. I have and property that's just now people are moving into. I had a call this morning. This gentleman's property tax bill's doubled.
We see people
from $7,000 to $15,000, and he's a small guy.
Sure, I've seen people in the office that have had it's the worst I've ever seen. People in tears that they've had land in their family for 100 years and they have to sell it because they can't afford to keep it.
I understand that.
So the only way you're going to be able to own property is, and worse than that, you can't even upgrade. You can't even decide to move into a new house. You've got to stay where you are. You're locked in because.
And I guess my biggest question, because I got to hear from the new commissioner that's going to be sitting in this seat, the reason that we had such a tremendous increase in property values means that we should have such a lower value on property. And I hear him. I'm with him. And I think we need to be there. And if it means that it's because I'm going out in 2 months that we need to shave this, that's not the fact. It's because it's hitting everyone in the pocketbook.
I think what
And
we
it's
need to
hurting.
remember is that, as I said, the values are market-driven. But as a body, you have the power to lower the millage rates so that we're not so negatively impacted.
Well, we do.
Make
So
that
so help us out. We need to save $5 million
We'll
right
make
here
that slide.
today. Tell us how to do it. Hello?
Like my mother said,
Well, is David willing, is your property appraiser willing, because, if he's willing to make a cut equal to everyone else's, and I'll talk to him tomorrow, we'll be glad to do it. We're going to get there as a group.
The property appraiser's budget's going up 12%, by the way.
Yeah, and our
Yes,
millage
it's a
rate
matter.
is only 10% above rollback, 9.7% below current on the general fund. And he's in the general fund. We're willing to go together with it.
You know, the real problem with this is the reason people that aren't homesteaded are carrying the bill is because they're subsidizing every household that is homesteaded with the tax roll. And that was a constitutional amendment that passed in 1995. I've got the same thing. My taxes have gone down on my house. They've gone up on commercial property. In fact, with rare exception, anybody that's been in their house since 1995 when this was enacted, not even adjusted for inflation, just in dollars, is paying less money in taxes today than they were 10 years ago. And that's a fact. And somebody has got to pick that up. The bill comes due, and somebody's got to pay that bill. And that's the problem. And we're in a very rapidly growing county. And I think that it's a very difficult situation. I mean, I know people that have had as much as a 500% increase in property they own in 1 year, which makes my 20 or 30% seem pretty reasonable. So as Tom said, his was over 100% increase. And there's something wrong. I also think that the property values need to start coming back down the other way because houses are selling for anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 less than they were a year ago.
we're missing the debate. You're blaming it on the values. It's the tax rate. It's not the values.
No, it isn't. It's the values multiplied by the tax rate give you, if you go up in the value and rollback, let's talk about rollback. It only gives me the new construction money from the new properties coming on. It doesn't give me an inflationary factor for the existing properties or existing costs of operating. In fact, there's a bill, and you'll see that's part of that tax thing. And it gets a little complicated because you're right. We do like Commissioner Wheeler said, we do subsidize Save Our Homes. It was a decision by the public to protect the household and to protect retirees. And what that means, because they get a value that can't go up over 3%, they are protected and it's subsidized by everyone else. But that's the system we're in. I can't change that system tonight. And your property appraiser has to live by that system and you work for him when he evaluates property.
Let me ask you a question. If the values were reduced by 2/3, you'd raise the millage rate.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
You have the power to lower it. When the values are increased by 2/3, you can lower the millage rate.
Absolutely.
But to say that it's
No,
not.
that's to get the same exact dollars without inflation or salary increases.
May I make a suggestion? On the motion, the second was just made. We've got another public hearing in a week. Why don't we direct staff to go back, talk to the Constitutional this week, and come back in with a plan to cut $5 million from the budget and see what it looks like next Wednesday at our public hearing. I don't think we can sit here right now. We don't have the budget book in front of us and go through it.
I'll be glad to sit down with all of
Then
them.
we'll find out, what the pain is here and whether people are willing to
That's a good
bite the
idea.
bullet and vote for it.
Well, we have a motion on the
You and
floor.
Tom
Should
will be, but-
should we defeat this motion and make a new motion?
I'd like to keep my motion.
We have a motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion defeated, 3-2.
Okay, I'll make a motion
New motion.
that we have staff go back this week and come back with a proposal to cut the $5 million that needs to be cut from the budget next year, and by next Wednesday's meeting, of course. and take a look at that next week and see what we're willing to cut and not cut, and go back through line item again if we have to.
I'm going to need a point of clarification, because if I do that, we calculate the numbers right here tonight, you can't change them once I advertise without going first-class notice.
Well,
So what can I calculate my numbers as the budget stands tonight and come back with some proposals of cuts so that you can look at them? You might not be able to, for instance, the new ag agent that everyone wanted, that, it's nice, although that'll have to go to get to the 5. I can tell you now. But we can do that. I'll get with every one of the constitutionals, and I'll make a recommendation.
I would, and that was my intent, Joe. That's why I'd like you to come back next week with the numbers and not the numbers tonight. Secondly, I would also like to see, and across the board, if it takes 2%, 3%, 7%, whatever percentage it takes, it should be across the board equally among all government agencies under the board's control, budgetary-wise. So if we need to cut 7%, so does everybody else.
I think it's called trimming the fat.
We'll try and come in at whatever percentage increase over last year. We'll all have to live with the same, and it's going to be less than 4%. So all constitutionals will be brought to 4%. That's okay with me, and we will too.
Sounds good to me. I'll second Gary's motion.
For clarification, Mr. Chairman, this seems to be a bit fly by the seat of your pants.
It sure is.
And until we have a reason to do this other than showboat, I have a question about it. And I don't mean that unkindly to anybody, but this sounds to me at the last minute, let's just throw our hands up and, we've had a couple people from the audience talk, and let's do something dramatic. I think we ought to be reasonable. I think we ought to know exactly what we're doing before we do it, and it has to be justified. Because we are in the business of providing service to the community, and the quality of service we provide is expected. Now, if the community wants less service, then we can do that too. But just at the last minute to get up here and just slash and burn, I don't think is appropriate. Now, if you want to have a workshop and we want to understand exactly where we're slashing and why we're slashing it before the next meeting, that's fine. But to sit up here on TV and slash and burn, I think is inappropriate.
I would agree with you. And I think if we need a workshop this week, we can have one. I'm simply proposing, we hear this, and a motion has been made to take it back. And this is a problem. There's absolutely no question about it. We are required to provide services. Right. And a lot of the people that are oftentimes people that want the services want the budget cut. So it's a dilemma. Right. But I keep hearing about tax caps, millage caps, and we should do this. And I know this has been a discussion on this commission in the past. We have the power to do it, and yet a lot of the conversation that's taken place over the last few years about cutting the budget, we haven't cut the budget, but now we want a tax cap or something because we haven't got the will to cut the budget. And I think it's time that we either.
Well, it's a little late to be sitting up here, acting like this tonight. But if you're insistent on doing that, then we ought to all look at our salaries too. Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. And what's good for us is good for other people.
But the time to do it was the budget hearings a couple of months ago.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to do it now. And if we do lower our budget 4, 7, 10%, whatever it is, it's not going to help that gentleman all that much because his assessment is gone sky high.
You're absolutely right.
His bill will go down $100 maybe, as will everybody else. And, that's going to create havoc in some of the offices here.
We went through extensive hearing in July. We went through 3 days of hearings. In fact, I proposed a budget, and I'm a little confused because it was increased by the board. And that's the time to do it. This is a little late, I know, to do that kind of a drastic cut. And, I just want to, and
you're right.
I don't think it's good planning. I mean, it's good rhetoric.
Yeah,
it's not good planning.
Good rhetoric. I think we have a whole new commission coming in a couple of months, and next year they can start working on what they all campaigned on.
That's true.
the Indian River Neighborhood Association can come in here and cut the budget in half.
They won't.
What, well, we have a motion.
Yes, we do.
Repeat the motion for me and for the public.
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Coward?
No.
Glad you said that.
Not at all. I think what Sandra said makes sense. I think what you said makes sense. And this is a little reactionary because, you know, the motion that was made to bring this back to rollback and seconded it was likewise. And I think there's a point to be made here. We had time to do this. And we had time to do this every year. And it hasn't happened. And but now in the 11th hour, you know, that proposal's been made, and it's the whole thing is, I think, rhetoric.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the tentative millage.
We're done considering proposed changes? No proposed changes coming up?
Beg your pardon?
No proposed changes coming up?
I guess not.
Hear any? Okay, the next item then is to make a motion to adopt the tentative budget. Been made, and I will second it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
4-1. And we need a motion to adopt the tentative, that was the millage. This is a motion to adopt the tentative budget.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That was for the general fund. Okay,
Next, we have the MSTU. We're proposing the MSTU millage to be at 1.1336. It's at rollback. This one is at rollback. Some of the highlights, we have 3 new positions in the MSTU, and the MSTU is paid by all unincorporated residents. Those are residents that do not live within a city boundary. There's 3 new positions. $83,000 is the cost of those 3 new positions. The biggest increase here, it's going to $31,594,558. There's a $4,160,858 increase. The biggest portion of the increase, of course, is transfers to law enforcement of $1.4 million, transfers to road and bridge increase of $1 million. And that's a summary of our increases. But it is at rollback. This one is at the rollback rate, which is about 18% below the current millage.
that do it? We're going to open the public hearing.
Then I'll speak after that. Yes, sir.
We have a public hearing on the MSTU, proposed millage at 1.1336, and a budget of $31,594,558. Anyone from the public? Somebody need to answer the phone? First we hear from the dais, then we hear from the audience. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Are there going to be any considered changes to the tentative budget?
Just a quick clarification, if I could.
Go ahead.
Just want to make sure that in this budget, this is where we get our dirt to put on dirt roads, or is that where?
That's in the transportation budget.
Okay, the next one.
Yeah, this is, now it gets some of its money from here, but it's in the transportation budget.
Okay, and when you said the $1 million that's being transferred into Public Works?
That's an increase. And I'll explain, that's a transfer out. When we get to transportation, I'll explain all the increases in the transportation budget.
No, didn't you say that MSTU had an increase in the Public Works of $1 million?
We transfer $1 million to the Public Works or transportation budget.
Okay, all right.
Okay, any other proposed changes? Hearing none, we'll make a motion to adopt the tentative budget, tentative millage.
Move to adopt the proposed millage of 1.1336.
Second.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, we have the transportation
No,
budget.
we need another motion to adopt the budget.
Move to approve the proposed budget of $31,594,558.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Transportation fund.
Yes, the transportation fund does not have a millage. Its proposed budget is $18,119,253. current year is $16,132,479. This is a $1,986,774 increase of 12.3%. One of the reasons for the increase is we have 5 new positions included in the budget, and they amount to approximately $500,000. We have a COLA step raises of $356,000. We have health insurance increase of $82,560, and floor retirement increase of $103,000. Also, to implement the new GIS is about a $140,000 increase in this budget. This receives about 71% of its funding from the general fund and the MSTU. And that's just a summary.
That's it. Okay, this is a transportation fund, 18 million some odd thousand, basically to build roads. Is that it? Public works, roads, stormwater. Open a public hearing. Anyone would like to be heard? Engineer Mr. Davis, would you like to make any comments about your budget? No? Anyone else? I'll close the public hearing. Any changes, gentlemen?
Just clarification.
We need a motion to adopt the budget.
Move to, you want the millage rate first, or just?
No, there's no millage rate, just
Okay,
the
no
budget.
millage. All right, I move to approve the proposed budget of $18,119,253.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Discussion real quick.
Discussion?
Just how much, and this may be a public works question, how much real dollars is added to this, or is this just basically keeping up with last year's demands at this year's prices? I mean, you understand?
Well, I think your concern, give us increase in paving and road supplies, Jason, the line item. I think that's where you're concerned. We did increase our costs of road paving because we realized fuel went up and rock has gone up considerably, and we have increased it to try and keep up with it.
In addition to the tax call I had this morning, I also had a gentleman come down to your office, Joe, with some nice pictures of a dirt road that we maintain with a vehicle stuck in the middle of it.
And let me
I hear a lot of these.
Yeah, we do. And let me tell you, they seem to be where all these sand mines are. And I think that every mine that's going to be approved from now on is going to have to pave the road from the front of their mine all the way. Every mine we have put in this year has been I get call after call. Those big 60,000 pound dump trucks loaded tear up a dirt road within a day. And we need to start making very stringent requirements that they have to pave to the next, they have to pave from the sand mine to the next paved road. It's because it's just killing us. And that should be a requirement.
I see it all the time. I drive it every day.
Jim, you have some comments?
Yes, sir. Jim Davis, Public Works Director. Another problem we're having is the quality of the material coming out of the pits and the frequency of the mining pits that are mining adequate road material. We're simply finding that the pits in St. Lucie County, Dickerson's Pit and Stewart Mining, are completely shutting down their coquina rock operation, and we cannot even get good material in this county. Developers are having the same problem. The material just doesn't have the strength and the bearing value to support vehicles. So it's just a problem we're having. The material costs in some cases have gone up 100%. Particularly fill material and stabilizer that we use on the dirt roads.
You know, Jim, when I was with the city maybe 30 years ago, you remember Lewis Green, who was the city the public works director? He once proposed buying a mountain in North Georgia and bringing all the stone back here. It would be cheaper than buying. So that was 30 years ago when he thought about that. So
Did you ever do it?
Should we buy a mountain up there somewhere?
Well, I think that should be a state initiative. I think the state of Florida should
buy the
look
mountain
at
rain.
some aggregate source. The state of Florida is having this problem.
Mountain rain.
Oh, we ran out of decent lime rock years ago, Ocala rock and Miami rock. And they went to this coquina, which is not worth a darn anyway.
It's soft material. It's
The state's not interested in solving the insurance problem or their road problem. They just want to put a tax cap on us.
That's exactly right.
I mean, they're amazing. They don't want to solve their problems, but they want to teach us how to solve ours.
Interestingly enough, they're thinking about doing away with making the homestead portability. They decided that that's the only correction mechanism inside the Save Our Homes initiative. They're thinking about doing away with that.
I'm going to go back to what Art said. 30 years ago, property was cheap in Georgia. You want cheap property now, you got to go to Pennsylvania or New York.
I know where there's a nice piece of property in New York State we can buy. Got a little house on it. Okay, you made a motion to
Approve the budget.
adopt the tentative budget?
Yes, I did.
And we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Emergency Services District.
The proposed millage for the Emergency Service District is 1.7639. It's 9.25% above rollback. Millage of 1.6145. However, it is 11.4% below the current millage rate. The Emergency Services budget as proposed is $30 million. Current is $30,063,673. Current year is $32,683,407. This is a $2.6 million decrease. The reason for this is we had a lot of stations that needed repairs after the hurricane in the current year we're in, and we had about $6 million in the budget for repairs. The current year we're in, we're down to about $2.5 million for next year. Some of the increases in this budget, though, are we did eliminate one position. It's got one position less, and that's a $100,000 cut. We have increased health insurance of $109,000. As I mentioned, we have about $2.6 million in station repairs and replacements. We have a cost of living step raise money of $720,000, and that's basically the summary.
Okay. Open for public comments. Anyone from the public like to talk about emergency services? Public hearing is closed. Are there any changes we wish to make?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
move to approve the proposed millage rate of 1.7639.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the tentative millage rate. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Emergency services, it's one of the top of the list for me as far as health, safety, and welfare of the people. This one, it is above rollback, but it's necessary.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next. We need another
The
motion.
next is environmentally sensitive.
We need another motion here, guys.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Move to approve the proposed budget for the Emergency Services District of $30,063,607, or excuse me, $30 million, yes.
Wow.
60.
Nice budget cut.
Thank you, appreciate that. I was getting to the bottom of it fast. $30,063,673.
Okay, I can second that. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Environmentally sensitive land acquisition.
Yes, the proposed millage this year is .1406 for this particular bond issue. It's a decrease of .0383 or 21%. This rollback does not apply because it's debt service for the first $26 million bond issue worth of bond issues we did for environmentally sensitive land. The proposed overall budget is $2,423,262.
This is a budget item to pay back the loan on the bonds on the environmental land. Anyone wish to discuss this? Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve proposed millage of .1406.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Move to approve the budget of $2,423,262 for the environmentally sensitive land acquisition.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the
2004 land acquisition bond debt service. This is the $50 million that the voters recently approved. This is a debt service for it. The millage rate will be 2.702. The debt service budget is $4,597,671.
I think you said 2.7. I think it's 0.27.
Oh, I'm sorry, 0.2702.
That was a jump.
Any public comments on this item? This is the other bond issue, of course. All right, public hearing is closed. Motion?
Move to approve the proposed millage rate of .2702 for the land acquisition bonds 2004 referendum.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Move to approve the $4,597,671 for the land acquisition bonds 2004 referendum.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next, I have to mention the aggregate millage. No one really pays this millage. It's a benchmark by the state. There's no motion necessary. The proposed aggregate millage is 5.3681. It's 8.82% above rollback. The next after this is a
Joe, that aggregate state has something to do with setting that, or?
What happens, it's a benchmark by the state because so many governments have different taxing districts. They make you add up all your ad valorem proceeds you get from all your taxing districts, and you divide by the total taxable value of your county, so that there's a benchmark. There's no one that actually pays that millage in the entire county. It's just a benchmark the state uses to measure against other counties. It's your total proceeds from ad valorem taxes divided by your whole taxable value.
Is that where they get the number that ranks us according to the other counties in the state?
They rank us by general fund and the other. I think, yes, that's one of the numbers they use to rank us.
All right.
Where do we rank?
5.3681.
We're number 2 in the general fund. I think we're in the top 5 in the state now. I'll have to look. They're going to pull the documents.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead, Joe. Unless somebody wants to hear more about that.
Okay. The next we have the solid waste district. The solid waste district, the proposed charge is $46.50 per waste generation unit, or $74.40 per house. It's a 0.39% decrease from the current year. Also, the commercial waste generation unit charge is $31.41, or 0.79% decrease from the current year. The ready-to-use fee is $20.02. The proposed budget in front of you is $12,231,100. That is $693,668 less than last year, or 5.4%. There's no positions in this budget. There's $25,000 increase in health insurance, and cost of living for the employees is $104,000.
Okay, this is solid waste disposal district budget. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Gentlemen?
Move to approve the $46.50 per residential waste generation unit.
That would be the non-ad valorem assessment rate?
That is correct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move to you want to go ahead and do the commercial?
No, adopt the tentative budget.
We didn't adopt the commercial and the ready-to-use fee. Do we need to do that? We
Yes.
do?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll take care of these last two in one motion.
We're looking at the,
I just approved those. We didn't approve those.
we're approving this budget right here. Right?
No, sir.
Ad valorem assessment rates.
My
The
last
last,
motion.
the last motion approved the rate on
One.
residential. I think Mr. Davis
Well-
is suggesting approving the rate on commercial.
And ready to
And
use.
then
in
move
one
Well, it
motion.
says the adopt the non-ad valorem assessment rates, and I assume that would be all of them, but you may make another motion.
Mr. Attorney, if you're good with it, I'm good with it.
Well, I think you were specific to the 4650 in your motion, so we should have a second motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the
The other rates.
$31.41 per commercial waste generation unit and the ready-to-use fees of $20.02.
That will cover it.
If there's a second.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries to adopt all of the ad valorem assessment rates.
Move to approve the tentative budget of $12,231,100.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Next, we have the non-ad valorem assessment charges. This is basically our MSBU's. They're per parcel acre charges. They're MSBU's for road work and for street lights. The first one is Vera Lake Estates. That's $19. These are all per parcel acre. Next is East Gifford Stormwater, $15. The Nixter Street Lighting Districts, Gifford, $21, Laurelwood, $18, Rockridge, $13, Vero Highlands, $23, Porpoise Point, $15, Laurel Court, $25, Tail Linda, $24, Vero Shores, $21, Exora Park, $19, Rawl Ponciana, $28, Roseland Road, $2, Whispering Pines, $19, Moorings, $14, Walker's Glen, $25, Glendale Lakes, $38, and Floralton Beach, $29.
Are there any comments from the public on this item? Any changes to be made?
Move to approve the tentative charges.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approved non-ad valorem dollar budgets.
Then we have the following. The Housing Authority's $222,422. Our special revenue funds are $151,070,108. Other debt service funds are $1,244,063. Capital projects are $58,124,480. Enterprise funds are $51,761,565. Internal service funds are $25,075,798.
Any comments from the public on these items? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any proposed amendments? Anyone?
Move to approve approve the tentative budget.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt this budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I think that wraps us up. We need to announce the time and place of the final budget hearing, which will be, the final budget hearing will be held 5:01 p.m. on Wednesday, September the 13th, 2006, at the County Administration Building, Commission Chambers, 1840 25th Street, Vero Beach, Florida. And if there's no further business, we are adjourned.